Welcome to the 1000 Nights and 1 Night. Now, when it was the 371st night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the king's son spread great banquets for the townfolks, and they held high festival for a whole month, at the end of which time he went into the princess, and they took their joy of each other with exceeding joy. But his father brake the ebony horse in pieces and destroyed its mechanism for flight. Moreover, the prince wrote a letter to the princess's father, advising him of all that had befallen her, and informing him how she was now married to him, and in all health and happiness, and sent it by a messenger, together with costly presents and curious rarities. And when the messenger arrived at the city, which was Sa'ana, and delivered the letter and the presents to the king, he read the missive, and rejoiced greatly thereat, and accepted the presents, honoring and rewarding the bearer handsomely. Moreover, he forwarded rich gifts to his son-in-law by the same messenger, who returned to his master and acquainted him with what had passed, whereat he was much cheered. And after this, the prince wrote a letter every year to his father-in-law, and sent him presents, till in course of time his sire, King Sabur, deceased, and he reigned in his stead, ruling justly over his lieges, and conducting himself well and righteously towards them, so that the land submitted to him, and his subjects did him loyal service. And Kamar al-Akmar and his wife Shams al-Nahar abode in the enjoyment of all satisfaction and solace of life, till there came to them the destroyer of delights, the sunderer of societies, the plunderer of palaces, the caterer of cemeteries, and the garnerer of graves. And now glory be to the living one, who dieth not, and in whose hand is the dominion of the worlds visible and invisible. Moreover, I have heard tell of Uns Al-Wujud and the Wazir's daughter, Al-Ward, Fil'Akmam, and, or should I say, Rose in Hood. There was once, in days of yore, and in ages and times long gone before, a king of great power, and lord of glory and dominion galore, who had a wazir, Ibrahim hight, and his wazir's daughter was a damsel of extraordinary beauty and loveliness, gifted with passing brilliancy and the perfection of grace, possessed of abundant wit, and an all good breeding complete. But she loved wassail and wine, and the human face divine, and choice verses, and rare stories, and the delicacy of her inner gifts invited all hearts to love, even as saith the poet describing her. Like moon she shines amid the starry sky, robing in tresses black as ink outvie, the morning breezes give her boughs fair drink, and like a branch she sways with supple ply. She smiles in passing us, O thou that art fairest in yellow-robed or camisole. Thou playest with my wit and love, as though sparrow in hand of playful boy were I. Her name was Rose in Hood, and she was named for her young and tender beauty, and the freshness of her brilliancy, and the king loved her in his cups because of her accomplishments and her fine manners. Now, it was the king's custom yearly to gather together all the nobles of the realm and play with the ball. So, when the day came round whereon the folk assembled for ball play, the minister's daughter seated herself at her lattice to divert herself by looking on at the game. And as there were at play, her glance fell upon a young man among the guards, than whom never seemed to have a comelier face nor a goodlier form, for he was bright of favour, showing white teeth when he smiled, tall-statured and broad-shouldered. She looked at him again and again, and could not take her fill of gazing, and presently said to her nurse, What is the name of yonder handsome young man among the troops? Replied the nurse, O my daughter, the dear fellows are all handsome. Which of them dost thou mean? Said Rose in the Hood, Wait till he come past, and I will point him out to thee. So she took an apple in her hand, and as she rode by, dropped it on him, whereupon he raised his head to see who it was, and espied the Wazir's daughter at the window, as she were the moon of fullest light in the darkest of the night. Nor did he withdraw his eyes till his heart was utterly lost to her. And he recited these lines. Wast archer shot me, or was thine eyes? Ruined lovers' hearts that thy charms espies? Was the not shaft from a host outshot, or from lattice window in sudden guise? When the game was at an end, and all had left the ground, she asked her nurse, What is the name of that youth I showed thee? And the good woman answered, His name is Uns Al-Wujud. Whereat Rose and Hood shook her head and lay down on her couch, with thoughts afire for love. Then sighing deeply, she improvised these couplets. He missed not who dubbed thee world's delight, a world's love conjoining to bounty light. O thou whose favour the full moon favours, whose charms make life and the living bright, thou hast none equal amongst mankind, sultan of beauty, and proof I'll cite thine eyebrows are likest a well-formed noon, and thine eyes assayed by his hand indite. Thy shape is soft green bough that gives, when asked to all with all gracious sprite, thou excellest knights of the world is strow, with delight and beauty and bounty dight. When she had finished her verses, she wrote them on a sheet of paper, which she folded in a piece of gold-embroidered silk and placed it under her pillow. Now, one of her nurses had seen her, so she came up to her and held her and talked till she slept, when she stole the scroll from under her pillow, and after reading it, knew that she had fallen in love with Uns Al-Wujud. Then she returned the scroll to its place, and when her mistress awoke, she said to her, O my lady, indeed I am to thee a true counsellor, and am tenderly anxious to thy account. Know that love is a tyrant, and the hiding it melteth iron, and entaileth sickness and unease, nor for whoso confesseth it there aught of reproach. Rejoined Rose and Hood, And what is the medicine of passion, O nurse mine? Answered the nurse, The medicine of passion is enjoyment. Quoth she, And how may one come by enjoyment? Quoth the other, By letters and messages, my lady, by whispered words of compliments, and by greetings before the world. All this bringeth lovers together, and make hearts matter easy. So if thou have aught at heart, mistress mine, I am the fittest to keep thy secret, and do thy desires, and carry thy letters. Now when the damsel heard this, her reason flew and fled for joy, but she restrained herself from speech till she should see the issue of the matter, saying within herself, None knoweth this thing of me, nor will I trust this one with my secret till I have tried her out. Then said the woman, O my lady, I saw in my sleep as though a man came to me and said, Thy mistress and Uns Al-Wujud love each other. So do they serve their case, by carrying their messages and doing their desires and keeping their secrets, and much good shall befall thee. So now I have told thee my vision, and it is thine to decide. Quoth Rose and Hood after she heard of the dream. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased saying her permitted say. Now, when it was the 372nd night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that Rose and Hood asked her nurse after hearing of the dream, Tell me, canst thou keep a secret, O my nurse? Whereto she answered, And how should I not keep secrecy, I that am of the flower of the free? Then the maiden pulled out the scroll whereon she had written the verses, and said, Carry me this my letter to Uns Al-Wujud, and bring me his reply. The nurse took the letter, and repairing to Uns Al-Wujud, kissed his hands, and greeting him courteously, then gave him the paper, and he read it, and comprehending the contents, wrote on the back these couplets. I soothe my heart, and my love repel, but my state interprets my love too well. When tears flow, I tell thine mine eyes are ill, lest the censors see and my case foretell. I was fancy-free, and unknew I love, but I fell in love, and in madness fell. I show you my case, and complain of pain, pine and ecstasy that your rush compel. I write you with tears of eyes so belike they explain the love come my heart to quell. I'll guard a face that is veiled with charms, whose thrall is moon and the stars as well. In her beauty I never beheld the like. From her sway the branches lean, sway, and swell. I beg you, and 'tis not too much of pains to call 'twere boon without parallel. I give you a soul you will happily take, to which union is heaven, disunion hell. Then he folded the letter, and kissing it, gave it to the go-between, and said to her, O nurse, incline thy lady's heart to me. To hear is to obey, answered she, and carried the script to her mistress, and kissed it, and laid it on her head. And then she opened it, and read it, and understood it, and wrote at the foot of these couplets. O, whose heart by our beauty is captive ta'en, have patience, and all thou shalt happily gain. When we knew that thy love was a true effect, and what pained our heart to thy heart gave pain, we had granted thee wished for call and more, but hindered so doing the chamberlain when the night grows dark. Though our love's excess fire burns our vitals with might and main, and sleep from our beds is driven afar, and our bodies are tortured by passion bane. Hide love, and love's code is the first command, and from raising this veil thy hand restrain. I fell, love fulfilled by yon gazelle, would he never wander from where I dwell. Then she folded the letter and gave it to the nurse, who took it and went out from her mistress to seek the young man. But as she would fare forward, the chamberlain met her and said to her, Whither away? To the bath, answered she. But in her fear and confusion she dropped the letter without knowing it, and went off unreeking what she had done. When one of the youths, see it lying, picked it up. When the nurse came without the door, she sought for it, but found it not, so turned back to her mistress and told her of this, and what had befallen her. Meanwhile, the Wazir came out of the harem, and seated himself on this couch, whereupon, behold, the eunuch who had picked up the letter came into him, handing it to him in his hand, and said, O my lord, I found this paper lying upon the floor, and I picked it up. So the minister took it from his hand, folded it as it was, and opening it, read the verses, and set it down. Then, after mastering the meaning, he examined the writing, and knew it was his daughter's hand. Whereupon he went to her mother, weeping so abundant tears that his beard was wetted. His wife asked him, What maketh thee weep, O my lord? And he answered, Take this letter, and see what is therein. So he took it, and found it to be a love letter from her daughter, Rose and Hood, to Uns Al-Wujud, whereupon the ready drops sprang to her eyes. But she composed her mind, and gulping down her tears, said to her husband, O my lord, there is no profit in weeping. The right course is to cast about for a means of keeping thine honor, and concealing the affair of thy daughter. And she went on to comfort him and lighten his trouble. But he said, I am fearful for my daughter by reason of this new passion. Knowest thou not that the Sultan loveth Uns Al-Wujud with exceeding love? And my fear hath two causes. The first concerneth myself. It is that she is my daughter, and the second is on the account of the king, for that Uns Al-Wujud is a favourite with the Sultan, and peradventure great trouble shall come out of this affair. What deemeth thou should be done? And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased saying her permitted say. Now, when it was the 373rd night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the Wazir, after recounting the affair of his daughter, asked his wife, What deemest thou should be done? And she answered, Have patience, while I pray the prayer for right direction. So she prayed a two-bow prayer, according to the prophetic ordinance, for seeking divine guidance, after which she said to her husband, In the midst of the sea of treasures standeth a mountain, named the Mount of Bereaved Mother, the cause of which shall, so called, presently follow in its place, Inshallah. And thither can none have access save with pains and difficulties and distress. Do thou make that same her abiding place. Accordingly, the minister and his wife agreed to build on that mountain a virgin castle, and lodge their daughter therein with the necessary provisions to be renewed year by year, and attendants to cheer her and serve her. Accordingly, he collected carpenters, builders, and architects, and dispatched them to the mountain, where they builded her an impregnable castle, never saw eyes the like thereof. Then he made ready vivers and carriage for the journey, and going to his daughter by night, bade her prepare to set out on a pleasure excursion. Thereupon her heart presaged the sorrows of separation, and when she went forth and saw the preparations for the journey, she wept with sore weeping, and wrote that upon the door which might acquaint her lover with what had passed, and with the transport of passion and grief that were upon her, transports such it would make the flesh to shiver, and the hair to stare, and melt the hardest stone with the care, and tear from every eye a tear. And what she wrote were these couplets: By Allah, O thou house, if my beloved a morn go by, and greet with signs and signals lover ere is wont to fly, I pray thee give him our salams in pure and fragrant guise, for he indeed may never know where we this eve shall lie. I wot not whither they have fared, thus bearing us afar, at speed, and lightly quip the lighter from love to fly. When starkens night, the bird and brake or branches snugly perch, wail for our sorrow, and announce our hapless destiny. The tongue of their condition saith, Alas, alas for woe, and heavy brunt of parting blow two lovers must abide. When viewed, my separation cups were filled to the brim, and us, with mere sorrow wine, fate came so fast to play. I mixed them with the becoming share of patience self to excuse, but patience for the loss of you her solace doth refuse. Now when she ended her lines, she mounted, and they set forward with her crossing, and cutting over wold and wild and riant dale and rugged hill, till they came to the shore of the sea treasures. Here they pitched their tents, and built her a great ship, wherein they went down with her and her suite, and carried them over to the mountain. The minister had ordered them, on reaching the journey's end, to set her in the castle, and to make their way back to the shore, where they were to break up the vessel. So they did his bidding, and returned home, weeping over what had befallen. Such was their case. But as regards Uns Al-Wujud, arose from sleep and prayed the dawn prayer, after which he took horse and rode forth to attend upon the Sultan. On his way he passed by the Wazir's house, thinking perchance to see some of his followers as of wont, but he saw no one, and looking upon the door, he read the written verses therefore said. At the sight his senses failed him. Fire was kindled in his vitals, and he returned to his lodgings, where he passed the day in trouble and transport of grief, without finding ease or patience, till night darkened upon him, when his yearning and love-longing redoubled. Thereupon, by way of concealment, he disguised himself in the ragged garb of a fakir, and set out wandering at random through the glooms of night, distracted and knowing not whither he went. So he wandered on all that night and the next day, till the heat of the sun waxed fierce, and the mountains flamed like fire, and thirst was grievous upon him. Presently he spied a tree by whose side was a thin thread of running water. So he made towards it, and sitting down in the shade on the bank of the rivulet, essayed to drink, but found that the water had no taste in his mouth. And indeed his color had changed, and his face had yellowed, and his feet were swollen with travel and travail. So he shed copious tears, and repeated these couplets. The lover is drunken with love of friend, on a longing that groweth his joys depend. Love distracted ardent, bewildered, lost from home, nor may food aught of pleasure land. How can life be delightsome to one in love, and from lover parted towards stranger unkeened? I melt with the fire for my pine for them, and the tears down my cheek in a stream descend. Shall I see them, say me, or one that comes from the camp, who afflicted heart shall tend? After this reciting, he wept till he wetted the hard, dry ground. But anon, Without loss of time, he rose and fared on again over the waste and wold, till there came out upon him a lion, with a neck buried in a tangled mane, a head the bigness of a dome, and a mouth wider than a door therein, and the teeth like elephants' tusks. Now, when Uns Al-Wujud saw him, he gave himself up for lost, and turning towards the temples of Mecca, pronounced the profession of the faith and prepared for death. He had read in books that whoso will flatter the lion beguileth him, for that he is readily duped by smooth speech and gentle by being glorified. So he began and said, O lion of the forest, O lord of the waste, O terrible Leo, O father of the fighters, O sultan of wild beasts, behold, I am a lover in longing, whose passion and severance have been wronging. Since I parted from my dear, I have lost my reasoning gear. Wherefore to my speech do thou give ear, and have ruth on my passion, and hope and fear. When the lion heard this, he drew back from him, and sitting down on his hindquarters, raised his head and said to him, as he began to frisk his tail and paws. Uns Al-Wujud saw this, and he recited these couplets. Lion of the wold, wilt thou murder me, ere I meet her who doth me to slavery? I am not game, and I bear no fat, for the loss of my love makes me sickness dree. And estrangement from her hath so worn me down, I am like the shape of that shroud we see. O thou sire of spoils, O thou lion of war, give not my pains to the blameless scree. I burn with love, I am drowned in tears, for a parting from lover sore misery, and my thoughts of her in the murk of night, for love hath made my being unbe. And as he finished the lines, the lion rose, and Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. And so do I cease my tale for the day, till it be morrow.